So, editor-in-chief at Agencia Publica, Bruno Fonseca holds both a master's and bachelor's degree in communication from the Federal University of Minas Gerais. He has a long trajectory of more than 10 years at Agencia Publica, starting as a reporter focusing on data-driven investigations, politics, and access to information. Both his own work and the work of teams he had led have been recognized with awards, and some of these projects include the coverage of the 2023 Brazil election, focusing on the climate emergency, and the investigative series Escravizadores, a year-long investigation conducted by his team to analyze the ancestors of the Brazilian political elite and uncover how the country's slaveholding past continues to shape its national politics nowadays. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. So, bonjour, je m'appelle Bruno Fonseca, je suis journaliste brésilien, je suis très heureuse pour parler avec vous, and this is how far my French goes, so from now on, I will continue in English. I put some captions here so it can make it easier for you to understand if I go for myself. So today I'm here representing my work and the work of my colleagues at Agencia Publica. Agencia Publica is a non-profit investigative journalism outlet in Brazil. We were founded almost 15 years ago. This is the team of Publica. That is me. I've been in Publica for almost 12 years, and today I'm here for a quick talk about emotions in journalism. So, where should I put my emotions when I'm reporting? To answer that, I broke this difficult topic in 3 reflections. And to begin with, I think it's an important question for us to ask, what kind of emotions are we talking about? Is it anger, is it a kind of indignation, or is it like the opposite, like compassion, humor? Do you feel like compassion towards a group that you feel represented by, or the opposite? Do you intend the audience to feel the same emotion that you're feeling? Is this kind of an objective of your reporting? And do you feel comfortable to share these emotions with your team, your editor, for instance? Emotions are very complex, and I think throughout my career I have learned that when you try to hide or run from your emotions, normally they run faster than you. So my first reflection would be for us to try to identify and analyze what's the emotion that's beyond reporting. Very often, the emotions are already there. They're shaping the hypothesis of your reporting. They're conducing what you're aiming to, who you're talking to, and what are the sources that you're looking for. These emotions can harm, of course. This, I think, is a more obvious point, because emotions that can hinder the way you're doing your report and how far you're going, what's the depth of your reporting. But I think that, on the other hand, emotions can also help your reporting. I think that anger, indignation, compassion, even humor can be very powerful tools for us as reporters. I think sometimes being emotionally connected to the subject can drive your reporting, can give you creative ideas for you to bring new stories or new perspectives to older stories. I bring this up because I think it's an important part for us to journalism that I think, and more people have talked about this today, that journalism has a power and a commitment to reveal power relations that can be normalized in society, by culture, by politics, and I think this has also to do with emotions. And I'm going to give an example. One of the major investigations that we did at Agencia Publica, which was presented here, was called the Enslavers Project. I coordinated this project with my colleagues for the last 2 years. It's still going on. This is the logo of the project. It's Escravizadores in Portuguese. Here is the QR code if you can look up. This is an English version. It was financed by the Pulitzer Center. And for more than a year, we dedicated ourselves to investigate the ties between the current Brazilian elite politicians and major enslavers from the past in Brazil. We traced more than 100 generations of politicians, from presidents to governors to actual senators in Brazil. And we found out we could map more than 30 politicians that had lines, family lines, to these major enslavers in Brazil over the past 300 years of Brazilian history. This was a reporting inspired by other reporting other outlets done. For instance, Reuters in the US, they made something quite this. The Guardian also did this concerning their founders in the UK. And I think that a key part of this investigation was a sense of commitment to not preserve this slavery past in Brazil as something normal, something that should not be reported on. And it's obvious that behind this commitment, there is a kind of emotion. There is a kind of sense of injustice that we as journalists should tackle on. That emotion was very important for us to drive this project. But since we have analyzed and identified this emotion, what should we do? How do we tackle this emotion during, for instance, this one-year-long project? The second step, I think it's important, is to share these emotions with the team and trying to make some plans on how to process and how to conduct your investigation within these emotions. This project, for instance, it involved more than 20 people in our newsroom, and people have different levels of emotional involvement with this topic. Some team members also, they could even discover they had relatives that were enslaved through this kind of genealogy investigation. And for our Black colleagues, this is a very serious topic that can sparkle different kinds of emotions. So it was this very, very, very important for us to have a clear methodology and transparent methodology on how we would do this investigation. How should we focus on the politicians and try to avoid bias on selecting who we were going to research, for instance? How we would ensure that the politicians that we were telling, oh, your family had this slavery background 300 years ago, how would we ensure that they would receive the material that we are digging up and they would have time and also information to come back to us? How we would create also some internal checking process so we didn't make mistakes. This was very important for us on such a sensitive topic. I do think that investigative journalism sometimes is kind of a solitary job, but I think that being in a newsroom and sharing this with our colleagues is a very important way, such for us to deal with the perks of the investigation and also with the emotions. I know that working with a team can create conflict. I think other people also here also tackle on this subject. But I think it's better for us to distribute these emotional burdens. I think it's always a good step if you share with your colleagues, your editors, all the emotions that you're feeling, your insecurities, so you can reach out and try to get to a solution that's more transparent and more collaborative. In this sense, and since we're talking with students, I think it's a good thing that today, especially in Brazil, where I know more, we're kind of moving away from this investigative reporter, like fiction superhero persona that you cannot feel fear, you cannot feel insecurities, you're not affected by what you're reporting, and this is not the truth. So I think it's a good thing that newer generations are bringing these emotions and this kind of new approach to journalism to our practice. I think this is a good thing that I'm seeing over the past 20 years with younger people, and I think this is a good thing that we are progressing in this road. And since we are talking about emotions, I want to talk a little bit about another emotion, that's compassion. I think that a journalist that fails to care about what they're reporting on, sometimes we have more difficult time even to engage the audience and to make people also feel that this is important for them. I think we have been talking about social media, how to engage with people, and sometimes I think the spark or the vision can come from your true compassion with the people you're reporting on. I think sometimes journalism can go to a cynic road, and I think that this is part of the job. We get tired, we burn out, we tackle a lot with hard subjects. But I think that's important for us to remember that sometimes it's in ourselves, this first compassion, this way of caring with people or telling stories that might otherwise be thinking of something minor or something that's not very important. And I think this is a good emotion sometimes to bring to the reporting. And also, I think this can help engagement with audience. Not only younger audience, but every kind of one. Nonetheless, I think that compassion must be developed within a framework and some guidelines, because otherwise you're going to get too invested, and this can hinder even your investigation. So this is the third point. I think that also compassion and emotions, they involve commitment and responsibility. And this needed to be mapped when you're doing a big term, for instance, investigation. Some years ago, we did a very difficult reporting on a conference in Brazil that was offering methods on how to convert LGBT people in Brazil. It was a gathering from churches all along Brazil and other countries, especially Latin America, and would invite people to teach them and also teach church leaders on how to convert people from stopping being LGBT+. And this was a very emotional and difficult investigation for us to do because of the topic, as you can think, but also because of the nuance of that reality. When I arrived at the event, it was taken on a rural site in Brazil, was like far away from the city. I encountered many people in deep distress. So there were mothers, there were young people, they were claiming to be cured or converted. People with very sad backgrounds of violence, sexual abuse. So it was a very an emotional, difficult space to be in. And you can imagine how hard it is to report on this topic, even to talk with people there. And this could also hinder the reporting or even incapacitate me and my team to break up with the story there. So it was very important for this investigation, for instance, for us to have some guidelines so we didn't fail and fall to all these emotions there. First, we defined the relevance and the focus of this investigation. We decided that was a very important part for us to show and expose the network of power and money that was involved in this conversion therapy group. There were people there that wanted to get more money to fund projects in Brazil, to allocate people in and have more projects in this on their cities. There are people who later campaigned for politicians in Brazil. It was also important for us to keep in mind that reporting sometimes can get subjective, but there are legal frameworks that we need to talk about. For instance, in Brazil, if you offer this kind of therapy as a psychological service, this is illegal. So it was important for us to map out and say, oh, this is legal, this is not, this is according to the law, so we don't fall to this oh, it's my opinion that this thing is not correct. This was very important for us to keep in mind and map out all the problems and criminal problems for this kind of event. For us, it was also important that reporting also brought the nuances of that. We could not just picture people there as being just villainous. It was a kind of a tricky subject because there are many people there who had suffered for instance, sexual abuse, and they were there teaching and teaching people there on how to deal with it. People there was in immense distress, people who were expelled from their families, people who were in the streets. So it was very important for us for the reporting what was doing there and when was right and when I get back, to give these nuances so people could understand what were the cultural and social implications of this kind of event. Another important decision was not to go alone. I think this is a very important tip that you could take for your projects. Every time that this is possible, I think it's good. I think you have a support, another person to share with, so you can keep track of your emotions, your methods, what you're failing at, and even for like risky situations. We also had guides on how to keep the editors and the team informed. So I think this is very important if you go on a field trip or any kind of reporting that is far away from the newsroom. We also had some guidelines of how to deal with people. This is, it applied on this kind of reporting, but I think it helps in lots of other ones. Sometimes it's hard for you to listen to traumatic experiences from other people. And it's important for you to have a guideline until which step are you willing to go and which step makes sense to go. For instance, in this event, we decided not to approach people and make them remember and revisit their traumatic experience, because they were already having like this kind of spaces there to discuss this. So we settled as observers, so we could listen to them and not make them have to revisit all these kind of traumatic experiences. And we also decided that the final article should be as narrative as possible, so it could bring all these nuances, all the motivations and the problems that people that brought people there. The legal boundaries, as I said, like the criminal implications of this kind of experiences, and also my own, how I felt being there, but keeping in mind that sometimes, every time I think you have to think if you're not putting yourself in the front of what people there are feeling. I think it's sometimes it's rich for journalists to be transparent and say, where are you coming from when we're reporting, what did you feel, what were the obstacles that you faced there. But I think you have to keep in mind there's a fine balance between what is you and what's the story and what people are truly living there. And I say this because this is a risk that I see often with younger journalists. I think it's important for us to develop this kind of guidelines so you don't overlap too much on what you're feeling and what you're reporting. I don't think this happens only to younger journalists. Not at all. But I think I have seen with younger journalists at Publica in Brazil, sometimes this kind of line between advocating for a cause and what you're reporting on. Sometimes it's important for you to trace this line so you know and you have even your feelings accountable. I think it's important for you to preserve your reporting and also to preserve yourselves. I think most of the times, there's this kind of emotional burdens that journalists have a very difficult time talking about and sharing with your colleagues, and I don't think that's a good practice. I don't think that these solutions are universal. I think that it depends on which topic, which investigation you're dealing with. I think that if you have time, if you have a team that you can share with, it's always good to share, to establish these guidelines, to make questions, to say, oh, I'm not comfortable with this, which is the route I should go, what are the limits that I should have with this reporting. And also I think that you should always consider the stress and the labor aspects of your reporting. A tired journalist, stressed journalist sometimes can make mistakes, and also sometimes it hinders defining this line between what you're doing and what you should be doing on the reporting. To summarize, I think this would be like the 3 main steps that I try to do when I do more in-depth investigations or when I coordinate in the team. So it's to identify and analyze the emotions involved in the investigation, share these emotions with the team, and define methods and ethical limits. And remember that emotions involve commitment and responsibilities that should be met. And I think this, because it involves responsibilities with the team, with the people that you're reporting at, and also with the public, the audience. I was very quick on all this reporting, but I think you can, if you want, you can check out these two URLs. These are two very important projects for us, Agencia Publica, and also I decided to bring this here today because I think these two projects, they tackle with this kind of emotions that come up with our reporting, like seeing a social problem that you think is not correct, but how do you tackle on them without being crossing the line of fine journalism? So I think there are good examples. And here are my contacts. I'm really open to share, to trade experience. We have had amazing time in Publica, working with students in journalism. I think sometimes we can learn a lot with them. We did a great coverage on Brazilian elections. It was done with 6 different universities in Brazil. And I think it's collaboration is a key for journalism, as people have presented today. But I think that collaboration with universities can be very powerful tools for us to bring new kinds of journalism, new visions and new formatting to reporting. So if you want, just text me and I will answer as soon as I can.
With Vittoria Barreto and Lilith Chaverdian for the chat. Thank you.
Oi, Bruno.
Oi.
Thank you so much for being here and for all your wonderful reporting. First thing that comes to mind is, could you tell us about one specific experience when someone you were interviewing reached an emotional peak? And what did it teach you about how to respond to these kind of situations?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I had some different kind of emotional peaks. For instance, there's the kind of anger emotional peak when you're interviewing someone that tries to attack you. I have reported on gun violence and gun control in Brazil. So sometimes dealing with these pro-gun groups, they can be very aggressive, especially when you're a journalist in Brazil. So I think it's very important for you to have like this kind of limits, know until which step do you go. I have had to quit some reporting because it was risky for me. And it was important for me to know until which point should I go, and also to come back and share this with my colleagues. I think it's important because then you can send another report, continue the investigation, and we can share how you're feeling. You can plan out if you continue on this subject or not. But also I have the other kind of emotional experience because when you interview people in distress, when they're feeling or experiencing something very harmful, this can impact you. And it can impact you like days, weeks after you've done your reporting. So I think that the best advice I would give is not to try to cover this up. I think you should like really keep track on how this is affecting you, get back to your colleagues. If you're not feeling well to continue this subject, try to find other ways to report on this, find other subjects, change with your editors. I think this is important so you don't break up. And sometimes you can get back to the same story later on, and it will be a much more safe perspective for you.
So you talked about this briefly in your presentation, but could you maybe elaborate on what should the reporter avoid doing when covering emotional subjects?
Well, I think trying to hide these emotions or think that you don't have them, I think this is a bad tackle on this. Most of the times, reporters, they're driven by some kind of emotion, as I said, some kind of indignation or anger, and I think it's important for you to map this out. And mapping this out, I mean, what you're going to do if you don't find this information? What are the plans that you have to try to find this information? How are you going to frame the story later on so you don't tackle the subject just for one bias or just one vision, especially when you're dealing with something very emotionally burdened. So I think I would say that the best advice is not to think that these emotions are not playing part on this investigation, and share with your colleagues. I think that I keep insisting on this, but I think it's important for you to share this information, this experience.
You've worked on long format reporting. You had told me a year for the Labor's projects, for example. You did an investigation into how half of Brazil's presidents and just generally political elites descend from people who owned enslaved people or suppressed Black and poor communities. You talked a lot about this methodology, for your team, but how did you balance the need to remain fact-based with the moral outrage such topics may invoke in you?
Well, of course, it's hard to report on this subject because there's a sense of how bad slavery was, and it still has its effects on Brazil. And it was even hard when the reporting was out on the public, that we have some critics saying that we shouldn't report on this is a kind of historical problem that's over, what's the relevance of this? So I think that what held me on a safe position, even to coordinate other people, was to really remain strictly as I could to the methods and what we were doing with the investigation. So we have different roles for everyone in our team. We have fact-checking routines between our team to map out any kind of mistakes. Another thing is that I think it's important for you to be transparent and brave enough to see and move your path when you have a mistake. We postponed, I think, 3 times this project because we needed more time to be very sure of what we were doing. We also were very transparent with the politicians. We sent them all the information we gathered, and we gave them, I think, 1 month for them to check all the information and come back to us. And luckily, we didn't have any kind of lawsuit on any kind of contestant until today. So I think that, I know you cannot do this with everyday reporting or like any kind of investigation, but if you have the time and if it's a sensitive topic, I think that being transparent, having this plan mapped out, I think it's very important. We also publish in this reporting and also I think all of our data stories, all the methodology, all the sources, all the data sources that we use, so people can download it and do the same reporting that we did. And this is a good thing, not only from the transparency and for the safety of your reporting, but also for the audience, because we got, for instance, this slavery project. It was used on Brazil schools and universities because professors and teachers could download our data and teach people how to search their genealogy and do the same research as we did.
And one last question to conclude the session. Given your strengths in data-driven journalism, how do you think emotion fits into data journalism?
Well, I don't like when I find other data journalists, they say, oh, I like data because I don't have to deal with people. I don't think this is a good approach. I think that data is just like a tool for you to develop your journalism, any kind of reporting, and it doesn't have to be separate from like conventional journalism. For instance, we did a data reporting on Brazil that we went through more than 100 people who were going to be displaced for the Olympics in Rio in 2016. So it was important for us to show the data, like how many people, how many houses, where would these people go, but also the stories that come with this data. So what were their names? How many children did they have? How much did they earn? How were they going to survive and make their living? So I think it's important to keep the data as a tool that you can use, but I don't believe in making like this kind of data journalism separate from human stories. I don't think that's the point. And I think that conventional journalists should not fear to tackle with data, but data journalists should not fear to tackle with humans. I think bringing both of these words is the best option always.
Well, Muito obrigada, Bruno. Thank you very much.
De nada.
your
Muito obrigado, pessoal.